Hi, this is Terry. Welcome to this week's episode of podcast and video cast of Being Heard. And I've been talking for a couple of weeks about creativity and its relationship to intuition and healing and productivity. And I want to talk a little bit more about creativity, but I want to talk about it in a little bit of a different context. And to give this a kind of a sense of what I mean in terms of the context being different, well, it's kind of like a photograph where there's a negative. Or I remember years ago in learning how to draw, and I'm not an artist. I have no aspirations to that, other than a little creativity of my own. But anyway, in this class, they were talking about drawing, and instead of drawing the object, what they teach to do, which I think is a standard teaching practice with art, is to block out the spaces around the object, the space in which its environment, that it's set. So that you learn to perceive an object not just as itself, but also the environment that holds it and contains it. And so neither one is more or less important than the other. And this is kind of what I mean in terms of looking at creativity a little bit differently, because I want to look at creativity, but I want to look at blockage and the idea of how creativity gets blocked and why it gets blocked. I've talked a bit about thinking about your inner child and all of those gifts and wanting to bring them on board. But now let's think of that inner child as the inner child that has closed the door, shut the door, won't engage, won't contribute, and doesn't want to be part of the party because, well, it's not a party anymore. And so what happens is when we want to access our creativity and we put so many parameters and constraints on it and pressure on it, and granted, in the real world, we have deadlines, we have bosses, we have things that need to get done. So we do have deadlines. And sometimes we do work well under a deadline because we get to that last minute crunch and there's an adrenaline rush and we go into overdrive. And something kicks in and we at least get something accomplished. But how do we know that that's really our best work? How do we know that we're not making music, creating a song using 5 keys instead of the whole keyboard, or painting with just a few colors instead of the entire rainbow? And we want all of those gifts. We want all of that on board when it comes to wanting to construct something, when it comes to needing to produce something, whether it's an artistic endeavor, a business endeavor, or just bringing our best selves out into our daily life. And so thinking about creativity, yes, we generally want to perceive this, or we perceive this as a negative thing, but it's really not. It's equally a positive thing. It is a really clear message from us for us. It's telling us something. So if you want to think of your creativity as the other side of a bridge and something is keeping you from getting there, or you want to think of your creativity as a magic box, a package that is in customs and you need the paperwork to get it out, to get it released so you can get those gifts, you can get that package. And so you can't just plow through the person guarding the bridge or the customs officer. It wouldn't work. It doesn't go well. And even if you did, it's not really bringing the full gift on board in terms of all of your innovation. So in terms of thinking of the block, thinking of it as a message from you for you. So what is a block saying? What is the purpose of a block? It protects something. So this block has come up to protect a very sensitive, intuitive, and creative aspect of ourselves. It's an aspect that we've been taught to suppress in our culture and our society for the sake of conformity, for the sake of our peers, for the sake of being successful in school, because school is not about creativity, it's about a set, standardized skill set. It's not about individuality, it's about conformity. So anyhow, back to the issue of creativity and dealing with it or addressing it or perceiving it as a positive aspect. So to look at creativity as a message and think, what is this saying to me? What is this telling me? So if you want to think in terms of intuition, it's probably saying, this is not where we're supposed to go. This is not a good direction. You need to stop. It's kind of like the cartoons where there's the roadblock because, the road isn't there on the other side. You go charging through, you're going to go off a cliff, and it kind of goes, oops, puff. Granted, in life, that's probably not likely to happen, but that's a really good metaphor for what plays out when we ignore a block. You don't go rushing through it because that block serves a purpose. So if you think of that block as a creative message as saying either this isn't where we're supposed to be going, then we know to regroup and say, okay, well, where should we be going? And tapping into your intuition and creativity can help you redirect. Or if that's not an option, then it's to say, okay, why is my creativity checking out? Why is all of these other aspects not coming on board to get this accomplished? And so chances are it's because the creativity has stopped being fun. Just like that little kid, it left the party. So what are ways and things that can be done to both accomplish what needs to be accomplished while accommodating the needs of that inner child, the needs of that creativity? And that's a dialogue, that's a negotiation, that's a relationship that really needs to be developed. And so that's the reason why blocks really shouldn't just be ignored. That if we work with the block, having worked through the block and understood the block, one, we get the enlightenment of the information, but two, we then get that onrush, that gush of all of the gifts, the water that was behind the dam comes through. And we can apply that and direct that where we need to. And so getting from point A to point B, very often it's not the shortest route in between. That detour actually is the shortest route, because if you're trying to get from point A to point B and something's in the way, then it's going to take you a really long time to get from A to B. Whereas if you go, okay, well, let's kind of wander over here near Q and see what's going on over here, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's actually a shorter way from A to B. Kind of like, was it a wormhole where you can take 2 points and you fold them together and instantly bring them together? Well, that's what this kind of approach is trying to do. It's trying to say, okay, we can get from here to there. And it's not really by bypassing that block, it's by removing it. And so those 2 points instantly just kind of come back together, because your creativity and your intuition and your innovation want to be there. They're part of you. There's something that's kind of created that distance and created a vacuum in between the 2 points. Anyhow, so in the meantime, while you're building that relationship and bringing these things back on board, there's a couple of easy tips and things you can do to try and help break through those struggles. One of them is, as ironic as this sounds when you're under a crunch, is minimize caffeine and sugary drinks. Those are what are called excitotoxins, and they overstimulate the nervous system activity. And stress, that really is what it is, it's stressing the system. It's raising the biological kind of wave level or magnetic level, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, out of theta. And you really want to try and get down to theta. And I can talk more about those in another instance, but you want to kind of be able to ease and soothe the brain waves. You want to learn how to find, the spiky energy. It's doing this. You want to slow it and ease it down so that you can sync up with that literal frequency that is where you tune in to creativity. There actually is a range that your creativity optimizes in terms of brainwave frequency. You can do breathing exercises. For some people, a strenuous exercise, go out and run a couple of miles. Even though you think, oh my God, I have this work to do, I can't afford to take time away. Taking time away is going over to Q. And when you go over to Q, sometimes it's the quickest way between A and B. Color. I know it sounds silly, but just go and get a piece of paper and markers and color. You can get, I have, I use for myself, it's the Flower of Life and a handful of markers, and I'll just sit down for 20 minutes and, and just get absorbed and just get focused on the activity of coloring these patterns, these geometric shapes. So it's not even needing to be creative and fluid and artistic. It's just a handful of markers and a preset pattern and filling them in with whatever choice and preferences you have for colors and shapes. And then there's something else you can do on top of those three. There's a bonus kind of fourth tip, which is to get out a piece of paper and a pen and write that story between you and your creativity and that block. Envision it in some way and write it down. Maybe you're walking through the woods and you're trying to get somewhere and there's a bridge and something's guarding the bridge. And what do you have to do to be able to cross the bridge? In other words, use your creativity to address your creativity, because that information that comes back to you is information from you for you. So maybe by trying to find a parameter where you can say, okay, what is it I need to do? What is it I need to hear? Give that block a voice. Give that inner child a voice and just see what they have to say. You might be surprised. You might be amazed at how much you already know and just needed to hear. I've had that happen myself when I've had issues come up, and I went out and I did a nature meditation sand painting and went out looking for one answer and, kind of afterwards looked at it and went, wow. And it wasn't the answer I was hoping to get. It wasn't the answer I was expecting to get, but it was the answer that I needed to hear. And it was probably something that I knew at a deep intuitive level, but it hadn't come to the surface. So by giving something a creative parameter, like creating a story, you can maybe bring that information to the surface in an easy way so that you can then see what it is you're working with and how to resolve it. So hope you find this useful. Let me know, share this information, find it helpful. And if you have something that you do to help work through creative blocks and productivity and how to tap into your intuition and innovation, share it. We'd love to hear about it. There's always new ways we can find that are helpful and beneficial. So until next week, be well, play well, and embrace the change.